Welcome everybody to Prewave Day 2024. It's amazing to see all of you, customers, partners coming together at this event. This is really what it's all about, is building the community, having you guys come together, exchange, learn from each other. We learn from you, you learn from us, and everybody gets smarter. We have an amazing group of customers here today. We have 5 customer sessions presenting on stage. Last year we had the first ever Prewave Day, 150 attendees, 2 customer sessions. Today, 5 customer sessions and 300 attendees. So Prewave is growing and the Prewave Day is growing. As I said, today is about you guys exchanging, networking, getting to know each other, and we've left plenty of room, breaks for you to do that, lunch break also at the end. During the keynote, it's also up to us to show you what's new at Prewave and what we've been working on so far. So let me start off with a few things that are new at Prewave. We are 180 employees today. We are especially excited that we have a very diverse team. We have 41 nationalities working at Prewave, which is something we're very proud of. And as we're growing as a company, it also means we need to invest in a new leadership team and in an updated leadership team. We have brought many new faces on board. You still know many of them. Jonas has recently moved to our VP advisory role, supporting customers with the most advanced implementation and workshops around processes of Prewave. We have Michael Wagner, who you will see on stage later, as a VP of procurement and engineering, product and engineering. Michael, before working at Prewave, worked at Emasis, one of the largest B2B SaaS companies that was acquired by SAP. Kerstin Kubik, our VP Growth and Business Operations, who worked at Google Cloud before joining Prewave. And our new VP of Sales and Revenue, Alexis Hartmann, who before working Prewave started his career at Valeo as a purchaser, then went to SAP Ariba, led the European sales at Coupa, and now is at Prewave, so really perfectly positioned to be a new VP of Sales and Revenue. Alexis, please come on stage.
Thank you, Harald. So I'm very pleased to see so many people in the room, so that's pretty exciting, and I think that's just the beginning of a new journey for everyone. Huh? Prewave has grew tremendously in the past 2 years, but the most advanced growth is ahead of us, so we are very excited, and I think that's part of the strategy to keep hiring also a lot of new people in the company in order to take us to the next stage. I think what is important for me is just to make the right decision. Prewave was growing very fast, and now we are really trying to make things in the right way in terms of organization, but mainly about the partnership we are trying to enable with our customers. I think that's the foundation of a great company. If we don't have a great customer, we don't grow. So that's the DNA of Coupa. So part of the growth is obviously next slide, Harald, please. The internationalization of Prewave. I think that's part of the DNA, to have a very diverse team, but also a very diverse presence in terms of growth. So we already did a lot in Q1 and Q2 because we already opened 3 offices. So one in Paris, one in Munich, but also starting operating in London since a few days. And ahead of us, we have the plan to launch the US by the end of the year. So that's again the DNA. We cannot really operate well if we're not close to our customers. So we need the language, but we need also the support to get the right service for you guys. So that's a pretty exciting journey. I have to say we've been quite successful hiring also and attracting the right talent. Back to the problem we are solving also for you guys and you customers. I think we are solving a problem that is massive everywhere. So every time we're entering a conversation with a new country or a new prospect, I'm very, very excited about the value proposition we can provide to you. And I think this is just the beginning, and that's the vision of Prewave, how we can keep adding value to the platform in order to minimize the risk, but also maximize the return on investment of Prewave. We have tremendous success in internationalization already. Even if we didn't have the team in place, we had already a lot of new logo outside of our core countries. So just naming some logo in the Nordics, and we have a Volvo team here today, but we have also Renault. We have a new South Korean customer who just signed yesterday, actually, with Harald. So that's a perfect timing. And we didn't have to change the slides, so that was good. But we have also some customer in Japan. So that's really great. India as well. So that's the beginning and the DNA, because, again, when we're talking about supply chain risk, it's global. So we have global brands, but we are also global projects. So I don't see one project being really local, and it's expanding everywhere. So that's a great foundation, but that's not the only leverage we are taking. Automotive has been always very early adopters for Prewave, but Harald, what's your take on the other industries? That would be also a good way to understand how we are growing.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis. So even beyond a few highlight logos, more importantly for us, we have achieved now more than 200 customers that span 23 countries in total. And we are today covering all major industries with these customers. So we are still perceived as being an automotive and manufacturing service provider, but really we have managed to also touch upon other industries and verticals, from the retail industry to pulp and paper, services, chemicals, energy, food and beverage. Prewave today is really a cross-industry solution, and that's very important for us to leverage also these synergies between our customers. Going from the customers to the users. Yeah, the users, we have today more than 11,000 users on the platform, 50% from you, the customers, but also 50% from the suppliers, building up their supplier profiles, answering requests, improving their profiles on Prewave. So a nice balance between customers and suppliers. Over the last year, more than 25,000 actions were initiated on Prewave. These are code of conduct requests, self-assessments, statement requests on critical incidents, but also awareness trainings, on-site audits, desk audits, and the like. So Prewave is not just a platform to identify risks, but to initiate action. And last year, we introduced the Action Platform at the Prewave Day, which is a way for customers to go beyond the digital into the physical and take actual mitigation actions with their customers together with some of our partners. And we have a dedicated session in the afternoon that will look at the success of the Action Platform 1 year later, and a customer testimonial from Porsche Holding, and also our partners from TÜV Süd, Quizzer, and Taylor Wessing, showing what they're currently enabling as actions on the Prewave platform. More than 300 alerts per day, and we will get back to that number a bit later in the presentation. Today we have more than 1.3 million suppliers on the Prewave platform from more than 150 countries, and we're able to raise more than 30 million in funding. So really you can see Prewave is growing up. We are not yet a large enterprise, but we are growing up and professionalizing as a company. And as part of that, you've already seen it, we also have a new branding and a new face to Prewave. And to tell the story behind why we chose this new branding and what the reasoning behind it is, I would like to ask my co-founder Lisa Smith on stage.
Thank you. Thank you. I started the work on Prewave 12 years ago with my PhD in computer science. At the beginning of my PhD, I was working on this topic of supply chain management. This is when I learned how complex and important global supply chains are. And shortly after I started my PhD, an incident happened, a supply chain incident, that moved me personally. In April 2013, the factory building Rana Plaza collapsed and tragically killed more than 1,100 workers. And I was already working on this topic of supply chain management, and that was why I was looking into this incident in more detail. And what I found particularly irritating about it is that there were early warning signs that this was going to happen. There were people on the streets protesting, being concerned about the building safety. But these early warning signs were simply not seen. And this is when the thought arose, we need to do something about it. We need to take action, we need to find a solution to fix worldwide supply chains. Next to the topic of supply chain management, I was working on AI, particularly on the topic of social media analytics. This is 2012, 2013, all of this social media data was coming up in huge amounts, ready to be analyzed by us in real time in order to understand what's happening on the ground all around the world. So for my PhD, I was connecting these two topics, researching the questions, can we use these new data sources, social media data, to better understand supply chain risks? What followed were 5 years of natural language processing research. I led research projects in Asia and in Europe, particularly targeted on that topic. And the result was an AI prototype that could basically turn text data in multiple languages into a map of supply chain risks. 2017, we then started the company. With Harald and I together decided that we take this AI prototype and want to bring it to the industry with the mission to make supply chains more transparent, resilient, and sustainable. And in the following years, a lot happened in the domain of supply chains. 2020 completely redefined the term supply chain resilience when chaos broke out all over the world. This was followed by a global semiconductor shortage, by major events like the Suez Canal blockage, and then by all of the additional challenges that came up due to the political situation in the world. At the exact same time, the whole sustainability trend came up, with the consumers being more aware about the products that they are buying and the supply chains. That led also regulators, policymakers to introduce new regulations. Germany launched the German Supply Chain Act. The EU launched the regulation on deforestation. And the US launched the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. And just a few weeks ago, the European Union launched the biggest supply chain sustainability regulation so far, the CSDDD, that will literally affect all large enterprises in Europe. So as these things happened all at the same time, it was clear for us from the beginning that we need to develop an AI that combines both resilience and sustainability. We want to help our clients to respond faster, to proactively mitigate risks, and to diversify their supply chains, but also at the same time to be compliant to all of these ever more complex regulations and improve sustainability in the long run. What we also found out is that existing approaches are simply not enough. They were often very manual, questionnaire-based, sending questionnaires to all of your suppliers. Normal enterprises typically have between 1,000 and 100,000 different suppliers. And whenever you do something with 10,000 suppliers, it's going to take you years. They're also static. You can only do this maximum one time a year. And they rely purely on self-reported information. So from the beginning, we tried to develop a different approach, which is based on identifying risks automatically using AI, and then diverting the resources to take action where it actually matters. So risk and action, that was always at the core of Prewave. This is our new logo, and it incorporates a worldwide well-known symbol in the beginning, the exclamation mark. The exclamation mark stands for both risk and action, two concepts that are really at the core of our approach. And what is particularly nice about the exclamation mark, it can also turn into a supply chain. And it can also turn into a whole supply chain network. And this is what it really connects with our identity. Now we want to show you a little video on what else we can do with that. Supply chain superintelligence. This is our new tagline. The AI was in our DNA since the beginning. we have managed over the years to establish ourselves as tech leaders, but it's also going to be a target. And since we're in this AI revolution, it's going to be an ever-moving target to achieve superintelligence. And we see this also as our mission, to keep stretching the boundaries of what is technologically possible to make supply chains more transparent, resilient, and sustainable. Modern supply chains have 1,000 to 100,000 suppliers just in the tier 1, hundreds of thousands of suppliers in the tier 2 and 3. Obviously, this is a vastly complex problem, and at Prewave we believe AI is needed and required to ultimately achieve a very proactive approach that spans the multiple tiers of the supply chains and that ultimately makes sure that cases like Rana Plaza will never happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So supply chain superintelligence. Superintelligence is both where we come from, but also is the target where we need to go. And to explain what superintelligence means at Prewave, I would like to ask Thomas Moser, our head of AI, on stage.
Hello. So, yeah, we live in very exciting times, especially if you work in an AI startup. And in the last decade, really since Lisa started her PhD thesis, there was a lot of progress, and there was really an AI revolution. And at Prewave, we strive kind of for two things. And on one hand, since the last 10 years, we take these new technologies and we try to make them, apply them for supply chains and bring value to you. So that is one thing we really want to be on top of the technology. And in the second part, we also try to build up this infrastructure, build up the processes, the teams, to be able to put this technology into place fast and efficiently. And that's really something not trivial. If I'm talking about new technologies, it's not just a version upgrade of some model. It's really completely new ideas. And these new ideas, they appear every month at this place. And we need to make sure that these new ideas, these new technologies, they are adapted to our needs, they are adapted to your needs, and they bring value, and they can be productionized. And that's very exciting to us, that we can actually we build up everything we need to strive in this environment, and that we can bring value, like basically with new ideas every month. Especially in the last 3 years, we saw a huge change of the pace of the progress. And I think we should also take a moment just to realize how kind of special this is in a sense of human history. If you think about previous revolutions of technology, like Industrial Revolution, it took decades or centuries for real technological change. And even with computers, it was a matter of years or decades. But now with AI, we're really at the point where it takes only months for completely new ideas coming up. And this brings a lot of new challenges and possibilities. It means there are so many exciting new things to do, and industry really has to struggle to keep up and putting these ideas into a product. And it's very exciting that we can stay up to date at Prewave on these technologies. And of course, that's also only possible because of the team we built up in the last 10 years. So we have over 35 people who are affiliated with getting the AI models into place, productionizing them, and making them produce value for you. Anything from data scientists who are on the top of the technology, on the research, to people who put it into production and to ensure that that it upholds Prewave standards and quality. And to give you one example, which also is for me a bit of a personal story, because when I joined Prewave 6 years ago, a big topic was for us languages, and we wanted to support as many languages as possible because supply chains are international, and we want to cover as much regional news as possible. And back then, we had to work really hard to support the 100 languages we were able to do. And then with the new technology advantages in the last 6 months, we were able to actually implement completely new models which solved this problem for much more than I've ever dreamed of, honestly. It was like, in a short time, we were able to accomplish this, and that's really exciting. And to give you an example, because if I talk about 400 languages, I think the first thing people ask is, okay, 400 languages, what are 400 languages, right? But it's really about the languages and the dialects. And if you want to understand very local news, you actually have to solve this challenge. And as an example here, I have this Argentinian article, which is about a new factory opening, which produces Autobomber. And if you're maybe German-speaking, you will think Autobomber, or Spanish-speaking, it's a car bomb. And a car bomb factory sounds like not really like a very realistic case. But in reality, if you have the Argentinian regional dialect, Autobomber means this pumper, this fire truck in the back. So this makes quite a difference in how you have to perceive this news, right? And more modern models, they really understand these differences, this subtleties of the language, and that opens completely new possibilities for us. So how is the Prewave AI working in Prewave, right? So I think the first part is what is actually the data coming into our processes. So we have per day currently around 3 million data points, constantly growing. That's a whole variety of data. It's a lot of news and social media data. For risk alerting, it's structured data like GDEX, open sanctions, but it's also for tier N analysis, a lot of bill of lading data and customs data and so on. So there's all the data comes in to our pipeline, into our AI. And what do we then produce? On the one hand, let's say our origins a bit, the risk monitoring. By now, we are able to produce over 300 actionable alerts per day. Yeah, and that's also continuously growing. And the risk monitoring already some years ago led to the point that we said we need to score our suppliers. We need a score. And by now, we have over 1 million scored suppliers in our database. So this is also coming out from the basis of the risk monitoring and all the other data we collected. And especially in the last months, very exciting for me, is the ability how we realized that the AI is very efficient to also be applied to tier N transparency. And by now, we will talk about it a bit more later, but by now we have over 3 million supplier relations in our database. But the whole AI and the data is just the first step. And after this first step, it's about what do we do with this to bring value to you.
Thank you so much. Supply chain superintelligence, artificial intelligence becoming more and more important, but really it's an enabler. It's not a value in and of itself. AI is good when it empowers you, the human intelligence, and it needs to enable real business value. And to visualize this relationship between superintelligence and AI on the one hand, and the value it enables on the one hand, we are presenting this as a reverse pyramid. At the bottom, we have the entry door to risk management, mandatory compliance, something that almost all of you are doing today because you have to, but it also forces you to implement certain processes, a basic set of end-to-end risk management. But the value pyramid leads all the way up to the most advanced multi-tier proactive risk management, which is no longer manually possible. This is where AI is really the enabler of that, but it's also where the value is the largest. So today we want to spend the presentation showing you this pyramid of values, the way we are also now structuring our product roadmap and our product offering. And we start with the entry door. Mandatory compliance at Prewave is efficient compliance, turning the requirements of compliance into an efficient implementation. We have this escalating ladder of new regulations and requirements, and the challenge or the threat is that this also means escalating effort, escalating burden for the procurement department. And we strongly believe, and this is also our goal, that many of these regulations are actually good and at their core have a very good purpose behind them. But in order to not get to the situation of escalating effort, we need to use the synergies, and we need to use AI to make sure the effort stays constant while escalating regulatory requirements are there. And this is really our mission that we want to enable. And this is what the superintelligence with end-to-end risk management, having an automated approach and a risk-based approach truly enables, and what we want to achieve going forward. To highlight how this is already used in practice, we have Katharina Masing from Enders & Hauser, and she will present how Enders & Hauser is using Prewave to comply with 4 legislation at the same time, using all of these synergies and implementing efficient compliance. We also have a very high-profile panel in the afternoon with Markus Löning, Tim Geier from the SME Association, Richard Wilhelm presenting the regulatory perspective, again Katharina Masing and Sebastian Rünz, the legal perspective, to get a view of where are we today with the legislations and where are we going. And last but not least, to end today, we are focusing on one of the most urgent and hot topics today, which is the deforestation regulation and how we are solving that for our customers. So the entry door is efficient compliance, but as I said, it's just the beginning. The next step that we see is what we call the seamlessly integrated scorecard. And that is about making risk available to the entire procurement organization. What is our vision? We have the centralized end-to-end risk management, which is handled typically by a central function in the procurement department. Is it a procurement center of excellence, a core project team? This is really you, our Prewave customers. A small team working on core risk management tasks end-to-end, reporting to authorities, implementing measures. But there is a broader world of procurement out there. This is the entire procurement department. They are not working on Prewave, and they should not work on Prewave. They are not focused with end-to-end risk management. They are focused on supplier lifecycle management. And the value of the seamlessly integrated scorecard comes when we are able to effectively integrate those two, making risk appear at the right place, at the right time, to make the procurement department efficient. We have Porsche Holding on stage presenting their case study of how they achieved this integration and were able to save 30 minutes per sourcing request with the seamlessly integrated scorecard. Stefan Reit will be presenting at 12:15 today. And one of our best partners, one partner that really shares this vision and that has already realized this vision within their systems is Jagger. And for that, I would like to ask Georg Rösch, VP Direct Procurement Strategy of Jagger, on stage.
Thank you. Good morning. Wow, exciting times, like 3 times the people from last year. I've been here last year as well, so very exciting. There's a lot of data out there that you need for your processes. How does this work? When we think about what you need to operate in your organization, we think of 3 things. You said transparency, resilience, and sustainability. I call it cost, resilience, and sustainability from a procurement perspective. And how do we do this? So when you look at this, look at this ring in dark gray here. So this is usually the modules that you see, right? So you have a source-to-contract process, and you have a procure-to-pay process. And wedged in the middle of this is what we call supplier intelligence. And this drives all of your decision-making, and that's the key topic of what we're doing here. So we bring the intelligence, all the information into your processes so you can really focus on saving costs, building a resilient supply chain, and focus on the sustainability targets that your customers demand from you. How does this look like? Harald mentioned we have an integration since a very long time. Now it's there. And this is basically how it looks like. So you see a fully integrated environment of the risk scorecard into the procurement software. Honestly, we show this. I don't think it's very interesting that way. Nobody will go into the system, open up supplier X and say, oh, what's today the risk of that supplier? Nobody does that, okay? But the important thing is the data is in the system and you can use it everywhere in the process when you need it. When you build your category strategies, when you make your sourcing and awarding decisions, when you place an order, this information is just available real time, and you have access to it whenever you need it. And I believe that's really the key of what's relevant here for you. But there is different stakeholders in your organization, and everyone has a different view on that and how that works. So let's look at those different personas and how they look at things. When you think about your C-suite, they don't think about supply chain resilience all the time, right? That's not what they do. They think about how can I effectively and successfully run my business. And then you take this to the next level, which is the chief procurement officer or the head of procurement or the chief supply chain officer, however you're organized here, and says, okay, now with those company targets that we have, what targets do I need to set to support these? I have customers in certain industries, they need to triple their output currently. And this has a huge impact of how you need to run and change your supply chains and work with your suppliers. So this is what comes to mind. And then the next person down there is the category manager. So this person needs access to the company targets, but all the market intelligence out there. And I see risk information as part of that market intelligence. You cannot know everything that's out there. As Harald just showed us, the number of requirements is skyrocketing. I don't see procurement teams getting so much larger, even though procurement needs to do this. So we need to become smarter about how we do this. So we need to give the category manager the right information so they can build the right strategies and make sure to enforce those strategies. That's really the key part here. I see many very cleverly written category strategies out there. People lack the ability to really execute against it across the organization. That's what I'm seeing. And finally, it's really the buyer. So how can we come away from the situation that that they need to defend? Well, it costs like 5 cents more, and then, no, you need to go with that supplier. We need to have data-driven decision-making that goes beyond costs and includes resilience and sustainability as not an afterthought, but part of the decision criteria. And this is why I'm super happy that we partnered together with Prewave, because we bring exactly this information right at your fingertips to the end user whenever they need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Georg. So this is our vision for the seamlessly integrated scorecard, and you will see at noon how this is already realized in practice at Porsche Holding. Now what's next? Next is taking the risk management from a more static to a dynamic approach, reacting to what's happening in the real world. And this is what we call faster time to response. This is what the alerting at Prewave is all about. We have a risk event, could be an explosion or an insolvency at a supplier, and the challenge is how fast are you to react, to respond to that, to mitigate that particular risk incident. And this is where AI needs to support to have a truly focused approach. We think about this in 2 phases. The first phase is totally owned by us. This is our responsibility. We call it your time to know. From the incident happening in the real world, how fast is Prewave to tell you about it? And this needs to be shortened as much as possible. But after knowing about it and hopefully having a very prioritized view that this is a critical risk, it's also up to you to have the processes implemented to respond effectively, to respond fast to those risks as they're happening. So the time to respond as a whole is really Prewave plus you, the customer or the user. Now, what is the goal here? The goal from the very beginning at Prewave has been to build a truly focused and actionable alerting. An alerting where the amount of alerts is not too much, so that you can really build a process of reacting to these alerts around it. With a broad-based media monitoring, oftentimes the problem is that you have too many alerts, and it's very hard to actually build a process around that. So if you are successful, and this is really the target that we are aiming for and we will continuously aim for, not too many alerts, nothing missed and as fast as possible, then the value of this faster time to response is realized. And that is that you as the customer have a head start to initiate mitigation measures before your competitors or market participants have. Securing alternative stock, capacity at the supplier, initiating additional modes of transport before the cost has gone up. This is the head start that we want to enable you and give you. And again, this task of alerting is really kind of like finding the needle in the haystack. It's all about looking at millions of sources, showing you the one that's important, prioritizing that, and surfacing that to you. And this is again where AI is the big enabler. And to explain how that works in practice and how we're improving that, again, I ask Thomas Moser on stage.
Thank you. So let's discuss some numbers. I mentioned already some of them. We process around 3 million data points per day. And you have to imagine it more as a step-by-step procedure. We have various models, different AI-supported processes to reduce this down to currently around 300 actionable alerts for you. And this is really the part where it's about not too much, right? The 300 is a number which is manageable. It's something you can handle. It would be much easier, of course, to give you the 3 million, but you cannot do anything with this, right? So we want to focus on like really giving you what you need and give you also perspective to select exactly what satisfies your needs. And the second point is that we miss nothing. And there are two parts I want to talk about. On the one hand, this means we want to put as much as possible in the beginning of this funnel. We support around 1 million different sources where we gather information from, so which is constantly growing. We add tens of thousands every week. And we really try to make this funnel in the beginning as large as possible. That's the key ingredient to give you to not miss any kind of event. And the second part we do to enable us not to miss anything is to also check ourselves. And that is something we put into place in the last month, is this completeness initiative. And what it means is that we have a team of analysts which have a different approach on a much smaller scale, so just on 5% of the other scale, to check ourselves. They circumvent kind of the AI part, but they are kind of giving us information. Is there anything we need to improve? Where are the parts we need to optimize? And anything, if you do something data-driven, these kind of feedback loops are really what drives you to optimization, to optimize the result to perfection, right? So that's really important for us to be able to improve ourselves. To the last part of being as fast as possible, there were also a lot of realizations in the last month. And one of them is that we need to just think about the type of events, the type of alerts we report on, as there's different need for urgency. There are events like a bankruptcy, an insolvency, some kind of accident or fire, which is quite urgent, and you want to react on it as fast as possible. Yeah, and then there are maybe other more standard pipeline news, like some environmental improvement or something like this, where the urgency is not that high. And that's why we spent in the last month the time of making this high-speed pipeline more efficient. And that's where we are right now, to have kind of this 1 hour from news to alerting for you to react onto this. And this is not where we stop. This is just now the start. Where we will be at the end of the year is to optimize this further. And there are two steps. One is we realize there is some natural, some technical limitations on how fast you can get with just news. That's why we work on incorporating news sources, more structured sources. We can really deliver to you in under some minutes. Yeah. And one of them is for insolvencies. We work together with Cofas to integrate this into Prewave to really give you data as fast as possible. And of course, other structural sources are there and will follow. At the same time, we want to focus and drill down on this high-speed pipeline and make sure that it's as fast as possible, that we get down to the 30 minutes to give you as good of an experience as possible. These are the guidelines, the goals we set ourselves, not too much the as nothing missed and as fast as possible. And yeah. Back to Harald.
So yeah, this is faster time to response, and you can see as we go up the pyramid, the need for AI to enable the value is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Here we are still at faster time to response, which is still at its core a reactive risk management approach. Something happens, I react, I need to be as fast as possible. If you want to build resilient supply chains, it's about proactive resilience. It's about investing in mitigation and building stable and diversified supply chains that can withstand shocks, that can withstand risks. And this is the next step that we call proactive resilience. And the question here really is, where to invest in mitigation? We know today, based on studies, almost 50% of supply chain executives still know they need to invest in having more resilient supply chains. But the question is where? Where do we diversify? Where do we build up inventory? We need a laser-focused way of applying these budgets because the cost pressure, Georg mentioned it, is increasing simultaneously. So we need to be sure that whatever we do is most cost-effective. The traditional approach of selecting where to prioritize mitigation is rather fuzzy. It's based on a maybe low, mid, high risk approach. This is a high-risk supplier, a low-risk supplier. We do an ABC analysis considering the purchase volume, strategic supplier, yes or no, single source, multi-source. But how can we get to a return on investment on that? Investing €1 into building up inventory, what do we get out of it? We really don't know. The goal is to move to a world where that is precisely known. And the first aspect that we need to implement is to have a precise view of the likelihood of a disruption. So what is the likelihood a supplier is hit by an earthquake, a flood, or an insolvency? So that is the first enabler, and that is again where AI supports us today.
To give you the example here with natural disasters, and I think there are two big topics in this graph hidden. On the one hand, as Harald mentioned, we want to go in the direction of giving the score meaning, giving it a probability. And if you see here some examples of our analysis, for example, in Mexico, Mandel Communications, they have a 9% earthquake risk. This is quite high, right? And I think here you really can use this value to give it a monetary value, right? Which gives you completely new possibilities of working with the data. But the second story hidden here is that this is much more fine granular. So this is not anymore based on the country and the risk you have in this country. It's based on the risk at this location of the site. And that's a major thing because if you think especially about flood risk, so let's say here the case in Shanghai, it's a 26% flood risk, which is quite high. But you know a flood, if you are like on a mountain 100 meters away, the flood might not really be a big problem for you, right? So being really fine granular and having this possibility of this differentiating the supplier based on a specific location is a major thing too.
So having this precise view of the probability of the risk is the first enabler. The second enabler is to have a precise view of if the event occurs, what's the impact? And the question is, what's the impact on your revenues? What revenue do you lose by losing this supplier for a year? So if we have a 1% earthquake probability and we have about 100 million revenue impact, we can multiply the two and understand that the projected annual loss is 1 million. And that gives us now a precise target to invest and to apply mitigation budget where it has the most leverage. And we will see today Kercha presenting their customer case on how they implemented this model in a very short period of time and also achieved a significantly higher mitigation ROI. This session will be today at 11:15 with Andreas Schön, Raphael Schmidt, and Dagmar Koch from Coface. And now getting to the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is extending everything we said today into the complete supply chain. This is the target of the new regulations, such as the CSDDD, but it's also the target of building a truly resilient supply chain. Multi-tier risk management. Why? Because the most significant supply chain risks are in the depth of the supply chain. The most severe shutdowns companies had experienced were on the heat of the Ukraine war. where car companies had to shut down production for several weeks because certain supply was disrupted. And this is really a multi-tier problem. It's not a first-tier problem. Similarly, regulatory requirements such as the UFLPA, not just a compliance but a major resilience challenge, is also a multi-tier problem. We have escalating trade wars, where the US is placing tariffs. Last year, the Chinese response was to restrict the export of certain rare earth minerals. What's the next move? How am I affected in my supply chain? All of these things are multi-tier problems that we need to have answered immediately. And what we do at Prewave, and we have been doing over the last years, is to use AI to build this map of the supply chain, combining customs data, media data, and predictions, so publicly available data, not asking your suppliers who are your suppliers, that can come later, but to get a first picture of your supply chain with public data. And to explain how we do that and where we stand, Thomas, take us through it.
So basically, the starting point for us was working with the custom data, bill of lading, shipment data. But there is some limitations to this. So by now we have around 1 million connections in our platform. But as you see from the data and the sources where it comes from, there are some limitations because not every country reports it. And therefore we were forced, or we wanted to find ways around this to give you a good perspective on your supply chain. And what is very exciting, one thing we did in the last months was working a lot with media data. And we realized that the AI we trained for alerting for risk monitoring is really good in predicting the supplier relations. And actually just in the last month, we built up this graph of 250,000 media edges, media connections, supplier relations from media. And they have the big advantage that that they have a reference, right? It's not just some data you can believe or not, it has a specific source, and that makes them also very valuable. And this is just a start, because this is what we did in the last month, and this will keep growing in the upcoming months. And that's one of the big new steps to give you more transparency in your supply chain. But additionally to this, we also have our predictions. So we understand that the data, the bill of lading data, is incomplete, the shipment data is incomplete. But with our AI, we are able to combine the information we know about the suppliers, combine their commodities and the industries they're in, together with other parts of shipment data to produce likely candidates of connections, even though these countries may be not reporting. So that's these are the three parts which we combine to enable you to explore your supply chain. And to give you an example of what this then means, it's basically here you see in some project we did how good the coverage is you get with these methods. And it depends a bit on how big is your connection to the supplier. But if it gets big enough, you can reach here values up to 60% of the coverage. Yeah? And this means...
So again, we see that AI can enable us to build an amazing outside-in transparency, and we are by no means finished with this. We are really just at the beginning. Yeah? But again, the question is, okay, so I have a bunch of data. What do I do with it? Yeah? So the value actually comes from analyzing it and drawing real conclusions. And for this, we have developed a new addition to our product, which we will demo in the next session after this keynote, to enable you to run exposure analysis, to identify where within your supply chain you are exposed to certain scenarios. This can be reactively, because there was just some certain trade restriction launched, but ideally also proactively anticipating certain conflicts. What if Taiwan? What if South Korea? And we will also see an example about that. But what we do is we take a look at your supply chain up until many tiers, and then run your exposure against these scenarios. So where do you have exposure around forced labor in the supply chain? Where do you have exposure around certain trade restrictions? And again, the goal here is to go very broad, get a almost complete view of the supply chain, but then focus. And this is what we achieved with our customer BSH, which will be presented after the keynote, to get this scope reduction. Instead of asking 150 suppliers, we only ask 15 suppliers. And that is really the value that we can deliver. And again, it's just the beginning. So to sum up, we have spent a lot of time focusing our product roadmap and development around combining AI and the value it creates. And we have also structured the agenda of today around this precise idea, presenting you customer sessions, explaining how they are actually implementing and leveraging these features to realize actual value. And with that, I want to say thank you, and really want to also encourage you to exchange, learn from each other, because this is what it's all about. Thank you.